Hello, my name is Noor Janae, and today I'll be presenting my favorite personality thing, which will be on Alfred Adler and the theories of personality. The main ones that struck me as interesting were the inferiority complex and the superiority complex, as well as the 4 basic styles of life. I wanted to take these and find out how they apply to my own life and how I could really relate them back to myself. The very first complex I would like to address is that of the inferiority complex, tying it back to how it relates to myself. The inferiority complex is a condition that develops when a person is unable to compensate for normal inferiority feelings. This sprouts from disabilities, from spoiling, from neglect. Disabilities make children have to work twice as hard, and in the end, they may actually develop extraordinary physical and mental skills that are developed as a result of hard work that they had to overcome those disabilities in their childhood. Those who are spoiled got everything they want, and they're shocked when they enter the real world that people don't like not having hard workers around. People don't like people that just expect everything to come to them. So in the end, these kids feel like they have a personality deficit, and that is all as a result of them not having to overcome any disabilities or adjust to others' needs. Neglect is basically when a children is going to develop feelings of worthlessness or anger, and they view others with distrust, and so they develop this inferiority complex, and it's all because they just were not given a certain type of attention growing up. So all of this leads to poor opinions of self and feelings of helplessness. I personally did not face any disability or neglect, but I did face some spoiling growing up. And I found it interesting that Adler found that spoiling caused the inferiority complex because I found that it caused quite the opposite with me. I felt that I worked twice as hard to please my parents and really show that I earned what I had received. And in the end, it allowed me to be recognized as more special in other places. I worked twice as hard in school and earned awards. So in my youth, I felt like it helped me more than hurt me. Some real-world inferiority complex application is found in movies. Carrie was raised in a neglectful household, and she always had a sense of helplessness with nobody to understand her. She never made any friends, she was antisocial, and she was lonely as a result. So she developed the inferiority complex. In The Clique, Massey is used to getting everything she wants and buying people with money. When Clara comes in with no money and just her personality, she begins winning over Massey's own friends. Massey begins to believe that she does not have a personality to win people over, and she develops the inferiority complex. In Game Night, a younger brother has always felt outshined by his older brother, which is evident in how he talks about his brother and how he puts himself down all the time. When a game night happens, he does anything he can to win his brother's game to show that he can win against his brother. And this all sprouts from the inferiority complex. So next is the superiority complex, and it's tied to perfectionism. The superiority complex is a condition that develops when a person overcompensates for normal inferiority feelings. It causes an exaggerated opinion of one's abilities and accomplishments, and it's self-satisfied and superior, and there's no need to demonstrate superiority, or it's quite the opposite. They feel a need to overcompensate and really display their superiority. They become boastful, they have extreme vanity, and they're very self-centered. Perfectionism, however, is something that we strive for. We strive for perfectionism, or we strive for superiority. We strive to perfect ourselves and make ourselves whole. Adler believed that we strive for the future, and Freud saw it as something that develops because of the past. Adler saw it as a final goal of superiority as the motivation to become a perfectionist. So, how does that apply to myself? I've always found myself to be a perfectionist, and it's interesting for me to see that there is a distinction between the superiority complex and striving for superiority or perfection. I definitely strive to achieve superiority, but I'm avidly trying not to carry the superiority complex. I think the problem with trying to achieve superiority is that we'll always feel like there's something else we can do. We'll never feel whole. We'll never feel like we've achieved true perfectionism. Whereas superiority complex is something that we really want to stay away from. We don't want to become this person who's very self-absorbed, feels like everything revolves around ourselves, and that no one else can level up to our accomplishments. So what are some real-world superiority complex and striving for superiority applications? This can be found in movies and shows. The Politician is about a boy in a high-achieving and wealthy school that believes he's the only person fit to run for the student body president, but he's constantly trying to prove that he's the best. He additionally always feels that he needs to achieve pure perfection in order to win that position. So he displays both striving for perfection, striving for superiority, and the superiority complex. In Mean Girls, The complex is very evidently displayed. The female lead, Regina George, thinks that she's superior to everyone else. She carries herself in a fashion that is constantly saying, I'm better than you, and she feels like she's the only person that can display that. She feels that only few people can be her friends, and even her friends do not match her level of perfectionism. Gossip Girl shows evident striving for superiority. So Blair Waldorf always feels like everything in her life must be perfect. This ranges from her clothes to her schoolwork to her parties and to her life. She never settles for anything less than perfect, and she's constantly trying to achieve. So before we jump into the basic styles of life, we have to talk about the creative power of self. The concept basically displays that the ability to create an appropriate lifestyle. Adler believes that we create ourselves, our personality, and our character. We are the ones that control our fate. Like I mentioned before, Freud believes we're shaped by our childhood experiences, but Adler believes that they are not as important as our attitude towards them and how we are going to formulate ourselves in the future. The existence of free will is what allows us to create our lifestyle. The style of life that we create remains constant throughout our lives, though. So, the 4 basic styles of life include the dominant, the getting, the avoiding, and the socially useful. Universal problems can be grouped into 3 categories: problems involving our behavior towards others, problems of occupation, and problems of love. And then they are the subset to the basic styles of life. Dominant, getting, and avoiding are not prepared to cope with the problems of everyday life. They can't cooperate, and they have abnormal behavior, and they lack social interest, which is how they differentiate from the socially useful. So the one to begin with is the dominant type. These people have little social awareness, they have dominant and ruling attitude, they have no regard for others, the extreme, they attack others, they become sociopaths, but the less extreme become alcoholics, drug addicts, or suicidal. An example of a dominant type is Catherine from Vampire Diaries. The Vampire Diaries are a show about a group of vampires, and Catherine is one of the vampires, but she has no regard for the lives of humans, and she kills whoever she wants, whenever she wants, to get whatever she wants. She's essentially labeled as a sociopath, so she displays evident dominant type characteristics. The getting type is the most common. It receives satisfaction from others, and it's really dependent on others. That's how they thrive. An example is Michael Scott from The Office. Michael does everything to get a reaction out of the rest of the employees at the office. The satisfaction he receives is from the reactions the rest of the staff gives him. So he's constantly trying to get that attention, get that satisfaction. The next type is the avoiding type. They make no attempt to face life's problems, and they avoid difficulties to avoid failures. An example of this is Matthew McConaughey in Failure to Launch. Matthew refuses to get in a serious relationship because he feels rejection or being left. He continues to live a bachelor life and lives in his parents' household because he does not want to face the possible failures of life. So he avoids his problems and he avoids the possible failures instead of trying to deal with them head on. The socially useful is someone who coordinates with others, they cooperate with others, and they act in accordance to others with their needs. They cope with the problems that they have in terms of the social interests around them. An example of this is Spencer from All American. Spencer is a football player that is constantly trying to solve everyone else's problems, his friends, his moms, and his football teams. He never lets his problems come before anyone else's, and he solves his own problems in accordance to how it may affect the others around him. So he displays very evident characteristic of being socially useful. What am I? I'd like to think I'm socially useful. Whenever I face a problem, I tend to turn to those around me, and I put them before myself. I see how my problems might work around the problems of others and how we might solve them as a group, how I might be able to solve mine in accordance to others. I never forget how my actions might affect others. I see a little bit of others in me as well. Like, I see the getting. I sometimes deal with my problems in how I might get reactions from others. I'm dependent on the reactions of others, and sometimes I tend to avoid my problems as well. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you learned a little bit about me and my thoughts on these personality theories.